Let's get more on our top story this morning. US President Donald Trump's declaration of new global tariffs of 15%. It comes just 24 hours after he announced tariffs would be at 10% following the Supreme Court ruling against the legality of how he initially imposed those levies. And we can dig a little deeper into that by speaking to Professor Justin Levitt from Loyola Marymount University Law School. Professor, thanks for your time on Sky News Australia today. What have you made of how the US president reacted to yesterday's Supreme Court ruling?
It's a little bit of petulance and a little bit of frustration. I think he is learning that there are actually structures that guide his discretion, and that in the US, most of his ability to set tariffs or taxes depend on Congress. He doesn't like that, but that's the regime that he's inherited. And the Supreme Court made sure to remind him of that just yesterday.
Yeah, and the Vice President, J.D. Vance, took to social media almost immediately to refer to the ruling as, quote, lawlessness, plain and simple. It's the complete opposite of that, isn't it?
It is indeed the complete opposite of that. So in our structure, Congress is in charge, and they have delegated an awful lot of power to the U.S. president, but they didn't delegate the power that the president took here to set tariffs as he chose on countries more or less at his whim. And the Supreme Court reminded him of that tariff decisions are fine and dandy when they come within the confines of a statute that Congress has passed, but the president has no unilateral authority to simply declare an emergency and do as he wishes. And so they reminded him that no, actually, law is still in charge here.
The president made a point of mentioning the justices he had personally appointed during his first term, but has this ruling underlined the relative impartiality of the system?
I think that the justices don't think of themselves as delivering wins or losses for the president. I think they think of themselves as deciding legal questions, including big legal questions. And there's no doubt that this court is extremely conservative, exceptionally conservative, given the U.S. history among its most conservative courts. But that doesn't mean that every decision is going to come out for the president. And this one was relatively easy as decisions go. The statutes say the president has a very small degree of authority in this zone. He took a very big degree of authority, and the court didn't have much of a problem saying that's improper.
From an academic standpoint, is this a fascinating test in real time of America's checks and balances and the separation of state?
A little bit. I'll say we can't draw too terribly much from this decision. This was, as I mentioned, a bit of an easy case when it comes to interpreting the statutes the Congress actually did pass. The Supreme Court has done a number of other things that are significantly more disturbing, including pausing lower court rulings on a number of extremely controversial issues, where the Supreme Court has acted more improperly than we've seen in a very long time over the course of the last year and a half. I think the real tests of independence and of whether the Supreme Court believes itself bound to law are still to come. In this one instance, I find it heartening that they effectively did what Congress told them to do, but there's a lot of other hot-button issues on the shelf that they have yet to rule on.
Yeah, that's interesting. We've already seen some state governors demanding tariff refunds. The president says that won't happen unless the Supreme Court demands it. How likely is that to happen?
Well, the refund structure is a mess. The president did not have the authority that he claimed to impose tariffs, and many people told him that from the start. Now that the Supreme Court has said that the tariffs were effectively illegal for all of the last year, trying to figure out what to do to get the money back is going to be a big mess. In normal functional times, that would be up to Congress to set out a mechanism rather than individual lawsuits over individual claims, because we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of value here. I will continue to hope that Congress actually provides a mechanism for people to get their money back, both big businesses and small consumers. But Congress hasn't shown itself to be the most functional body of late, and so it might actually fall back on the courts to provide relief from people having incurred economic harm they weren't ever supposed to incur.
Yeah, further tests to come. Fascinating analysis. We really appreciate your time, Professor Justin Levitt. Thank you.